Greetings and welcome to this week's episode of the platform Let's Talk About It. I'm your host, Darrell Hardin, and I'm here to create a space for Black minds, voices, and culture to thrive. Thank you for tuning in, and let's get into this episode. Hey everybody, it's Jasmine. I just wanted to hop on here real quick and give a quick introduction to the episode. This episode is really for those who believe they have room to grow and learn regarding being a wise steward over your finances. It's a very basic level, preliminary budgeting, knows about investing and credit and these types of things. It's actually a perfect example of the reason I started the podcast. It was created to catch moments like this episode where we can share information that can help so many in the community and be culturally respectful as well. Just warning you, I tried to make it as short as possible. I tried to edit it down, but there were so many gems shared. I didn't want to compromise the episode's integrity by editing too much. So I would suggest that you take your time listening to it. Maybe pull out a notepad if there's anything that, or take notes. I said pull out a notepad. I'm funny. To take notes on whatever is shared that, may resonate with you. I also want to just forewarn you that you may hear my cat Isis in the background. And if you do, she's just saying hello. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. So I just wanted to give the listeners an opportunity to get to know you and who you are. I know you pretty well as my dad. I know, your story and why you're such a great fit for this episode, but I wanted to give them opportunity to get to know you and where you're from and what paths kind of led you to where you are today.
Well, first, let me say thank you for the invite. Shout out to my daughter Jasmine for doing this podcast. I think it's important that we learn how to maintain a budget and what goes into budgeting and how you get from zero to hero, basically. I've spent 40 years serving the country as a active duty Air Force airman for 22 years. And now as a government contractor for 18. So I've spent a lot of time in the service, travel all over the world, come from a very small town. I was born in a small town, but raised in Dallas, born in Midland, Texas. 7 brothers and 3 sisters. So as you can imagine, my mom and dad, your grandmother and your grandfather, there was always a struggle in the house. There was always hand-me-downs from a child. Your granddad was very instrumental in teaching us the basics of finance, within your means and your budgeting and things like that. So at a basic level, I give all credit to him because he was the one who was very instrumental in teaching us to be financially wise no matter what.
Because you pretty much taught me everything I know, and through my experiences and my, my life, I've just seen how a lot of people don't have that privilege of people who were financially literate to be able to pass down those skills and tips. So I wanted to be able to give other people an opportunity to get some of that information. So my first question is, what do you think the biggest lesson you have learned over the years regarding creating a life with financial freedom?
Wow, that's a good question. You have to define financial freedom first. So let's put a definition to that, and then we'll talk about how we got there. But financial freedom to me means not owing anyone other than my mortgage and a car payment. And it's taken me a while to get to this point in life. But again, I always had the basic principles in terms of how to establish. Now, that don't mean I did everything right, the first time. There were some growing pains, a lot of it. But when you learn the basics, you can have a life where you can establish your budget, and you can go on vacations, and you can buy gifts, and you can treat yourself without being financially strained or constrained by your finances. So it's important to learn. It's an important part of growing up, especially as a young adult. You want to get all of these principles down prior to marriage, children, things of that nature. So want to add some stress to a marriage, be in financial debt. If you want to add some stress to being a parent, owe some people some money when you have to provide for your children. And one of the things that I just want to point out, over the last 2 years, especially when COVID first happened, there was a lot of people in the U.S. really got shown why it's important to have sound financial principles. COVID should have wakened the whole nation up to, man, am I doing this right, or could I be doing better in my finances? Thankfully they enacted some policies. The government enacted some policies where they allow people who were in debt to still, stay within their houses, or keep, their cars from being repossessed. They gave everybody a financial platform really to stand on, because the whole economy would have sank. Other than that, so it's important to learn at a young age what it is that you really need to do, and why it's so important pre-COVID to be financially secure. And post-COVID, like you said, do I ever want to go back on unemployment? Do I ever want to look and don't have any income coming into my household and not be able to feed my family? So, very important fact to get from owing money to, like you said, the financial freedom, the aspect of financial freedom.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, what do you feel like is a mistake that you had learned from pretty early on in your younger years regarding financial, stewardism?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you a funny story. When I first came in the military, my first duty assignment, I was stationed in Germany, and prior to getting there, I had part-time jobs like most teenagers, going through high school, working part-time. But your granddad used to take us to the bank every Friday, or every other Friday. He would make us go over to the bank. This is pre
credit cards.
No, credit cards was there, but this was pre direct deposit. You got a check at the end of your pay period, and you had to go to the bank to cash a check. So he would take us over to the bank, and we were, whether we were throwing papers or, cleaning buildings or whatever the part-time job was, he would make us go to the bank, and the tellers knew him, they knew his sons, and, they would say hello. And some of the mistakes that I probably made is I really been in the military. It kind of, when I left home, I knew what to do financially, but when I left home, I was entrapped by a lot of the things that other young people get hooked on. Back then, it was reel-to-reels, big stereo systems and big speakers about as tall as you are. Now, it's I look at them now, and it's like so much sound comes out of these little old bitty speakers. But so we had. I was living in the dorms. Um, every payday, you knew what you were going to get paid. You knew when you were going to get paid. So initially, that financial aspect of what do I want to do long term was never there in my night, because I came in at 19. So by 2021, I just wanted to have a stereo system, and I wanted to have a sports car. So that was my those were my two goals. Really was to achieve those two things, and I knew the military would be able to get it to me because of your uncles who had come in the military before me. So I think those were probably just the things that I wanted, that I knew I had in the back of my mind how to get it. And I knew I had to save my money because of your granddad. I had to save my money to get there. But that's what I did, instead of being, and there's nothing wrong with that, I should say, let me first and foremost, but I could have done a little bit better in terms of saving. But my money went to my car, and it went to my stereo system. So those were probably my two biggest regrets. I'll tell you this one little story, and then I'll let us move on. When I when I got to the dorms, I was in Germany, and being in the military, we got paid every 2 weeks. Like I said, you knew how much money you were going to get paid every 2 weeks. We had money for food. They would give us money for food, and we would get our regular salaries. I thought I was rich, and my my roommates thought I was a little crazy, because I knew I wanted a car, like I said, so I knew I had a goal to save for. But when I got my checks, I would only cash the check, and when I spent it, I would go cash another check. So sometimes I would have about 6 or 7 or 8, 9 checks just stacked up in my locker, my wall locker. They thought that I was like, what are you doing? Well, there wasn't any ATM machines and things like that. But when I wanted money, I would just go cash a check, and that's kind of how I lived. I didn't really have to buy clothes, because the military gave you clothes. So I had a pair of jeans and some shirts and things like that, but I really didn't have to have a lot of extra clothing. So it made it easy for me just to keep my money, save my money, and spend it when I needed something. So
I always can appreciate that story, because it puts into perspective how important being willing to sacrifice is when it comes to your finances, and not just trying to keep up with everyone else, or keep up with what society makes you think you should be spending your money on, or anything. Just making that conscious effort of, like you said, living within your means, knowing where you're at, and still like creating your own definition of like, okay, well, what do I want my life to look like where I'm at right now?
Yeah.
It is my pleasure that we are going to get into the food for thought segment of this episode, and the very first food for thought of the podcast. This segment was created to provide a moment of reflection and abstract thinking regarding thoughts I believe help further the points being made throughout the episode. It's intended to give listeners a positive takeaway, especially because some of the topics we may get into can get kind of heavy. This week's food for thought I leave you with is: you are more than your circumstances. They don't define you unless you allow it. In the words of Mark Cuban, who you may know as a very successful businessman from the show Shark Tank, a quote I deeply appreciate and wanted to share with you all: work like there is someone working 24 hours a day to take it away from you. This is so very important when you think about all that comes with the Black experience, and how historically there have been systems and practices in our nation that have intentionally made our lives a challenge. So it's important that we take pride in that challenge and not allow the challenge to consume us in a negative way, but to allow all destructive emotions and feelings that may be associated with the challenge to be a motivating power to allow you to overcome all that was designed to keep you oppressed. You were led here to this podcast, to this episode, for a reason. It is not a coincidence. You woke up today with a divine purpose, whether you realize it or even know what it is. It doesn't matter. This is your opportunity to utilize this privilege of living to grow into whoever you desire to become. I hope this resonates with your spirit. And let's get back into this episode. Believe that, especially now, I can't speak for back then, obviously, but now the culture is very, your worth is connected to your bank account. Like how many zeros you have in your bank account. So what is your suggestion on how to overcome negative feelings about your circumstances?
Hey, good. I like that question. And I'll tell you a story. I told you about my wanting a car.
Mm-hmm.
So that thought of your worth was even around back then and before. So it's nothing new in terms of money, finances. But instead of your bank account, most men, when I was growing up, it was the kind of car that you drove. That really told a story about what your bank, and it may be the same. That might be true today.
Mm-hmm.
Probably is, but that's why I wanted a sports car, because I wanted to look cool. and I got one, and I remember the first couple of times, I was like, man, I didn't factor in the insurance. and so not knowing that you had to have full coverage on the car, and you're driving, and so it could get you into a lot of trouble financially if you're not careful. Now I say that question goes back even further, and I think for young men, even today, or as a young person, I should say, not only men, but for young ladies too. We see what we like on the outside, and it's very appealing. What you see, wow, that's really nice. That's something I want, but I don't want to take the necessary steps to get there. You can have just about anything that you want, you're willing to work for, but you have to be intentional, and you have to be a good steward. You have to be purposeful in what you're doing with your money. And that's why I think having those goals, having the long-term goals, short-term goals, those intermediary goals is vital if you want to be successful financially. So it was the same, but probably now more than ever, because we didn't have the internet, we didn't have too many people outside of your social circle to influence you. Magazines maybe, but you know what I mean. It was nothing like it is today, where you're
It's a constant feed.
Yeah, you can't open your computer without somebody sending you, or your email without somebody sending you a plug for this or that, and so you can get lost very easily if you don't have the principles that we're trying to drive home now, to understand where you are. I may not get there today, but 5 years from now, I'll be in a better position to get to where I want to be. But you have to start with the basics. So I think it's a little more challenging with all the social media feeds and all. We only have So now you have kids playing on with their tablets, and they're getting these uh, messages and signals from some cartoon character or whatever it is it's on their tablet at the time, and we don't really think about that as a parent. What am I conditioning my children to? Where we didn't have that, we didn't. So that obstacle, you have to learn to navigate now to help them to understand what they're looking at when they're a little older as they grow up, to not be so focused on what is the the cartoons. We had cartoons on Saturdays. We had cartoons for an hour after school, and then that was it. So so you have to be purposeful. You have to be intentional, and as a young adult, you really have to know what you want, because you're going to be given a lot of choices. And with those choices, if you're not careful, you can make mistakes. And it will take you to a place that's hard to get out of. Once you get in debt, it's not impossible to get out, but they make it so hard. So even when you start working, and you'll get flagged for, hey, if you want some credit, it's good to have credit, but you have to learn that bill is not a get out of jail free. You know what I mean? They'll let you spend and spend and spend until you are over your head and you feel like you're drowning in debt. And that's where a lot of that it's hard for people to get out of. Once they give them that card, which I didn't really have until I was well in my 20s. Nobody would even give me a credit card. But now when you're in college or you're 18 or 19, they're sending you applications for a credit card. Like, wow, really? That's amazing. So I would, even as you grow older, I would encourage you to say, if I want a credit card, I want a secured card, so that I learn not to go over that limit of 4 or 5 thousands of dollars. As you get out and you're trying to, navigate your way through your finances. That's a pitfall that you should avoid.
And that's interesting, because one of my questions is for young people who are interested in investing or building credit. Like, I know those are two separate things, but what advice would you give them? Because that was a request when I was asking people what they wanted to hear on this episode. That was a common ping that I got about investing in credit.
Okay. Like you said, there's two different avenues, and credit is important. It's important today to have good credit, but it's a slippery slope. So you have to really be careful, and you really have to know what you're getting yourself into. I would encourage any young person just starting out, whether they be their first year in college, or their high school years, or like you, somebody who's graduated college and now you're ready to move on to that next phase in life, to really sit back and speak with someone financially about where you are, where you want to be, and obtaining good credit to get you there, because it is important in terms of the rates that you pay. 18% credit card to me that's robbery. But that's what you get if you don't have good credit. 19% that you're trying to pay back $1,000, and you think about 18% of that. Every time that you go another month, they're adding, and it's just rolling into your where you may pay $150, but only 30 of that is going to your principal, and the rest of it is interest payments. So let's learn how to get to a good credit status, and then we'll talk about investing. And investing is important, but I think you need to establish yourself financially before you invest. Let's get the good get the good principles down, and then we'll talk about investments. If you have cash available, I would say investing is a important thing to learn, maybe in your mid to late 20s. Understand, get your foundation laid in terms of how much I spend, how much I make, my savings, my goals. I've reached all of these things, and now I want to learn to invest. And if you're debt free and you have some capital to use to invest, great. Let's come back and talk about that one. I think that's, there's a lot of ways to invest your money, whether it's IRA or, now they got these day traders, where you can trade, and they have applications, apps on your phone where you can go and trade and buy stock. And so, again, that's one of those things that if you, reason why, so let's come back to it, is you have to be willing to lose that money with an investment. It could go south. And your $500 that you put in there and you thought was going to do great, it could very well take a nosedive, and then you've lost that. So if you can get to a point where you can absorb the loss, it's like, yeah, I have some money that I want to invest. We'll start with $1,000. And when you get to $1,000 that you can lose and you have nothing else to do, we'll talk about investing that $1,000 to gain money. Yeah. You can invest it in CDs and IRAs and do well with it. But again, it's part of what do I want to do in terms of the parameters. I think that should be the last one that you really dive into.
I was going to ask you, why do you say investing should be done after you're financially stable? And like you said, but I'm assuming the main reason is, like you said, because of that reason of it's a risk.
It is a risk. That you can lose that money that you're investing. And maybe it's not a total loss, but it's the money that you invested, and I'll stick with $1,000. Maybe in 3 months that money is only worth $300, but in the long term it could flip, and you put the right money in the right place, and you can make more money. But you really only should be invested in money that you have that you can stand to lose. If you look at investments like that, then you'll be like, okay, now I'm ready. Investing for retirement, or am I investing really to make money, as much money as I can? My tip to investment is, let's come back to that when we have more money set aside that we want to just invest that. So maybe we'll do a part 2.
My next question is, what's your top 3 to 5? I gave 3 to 5 because it's up to you, but need to knows regarding budgeting.
Okay, I'm glad you asked me. I was thinking about this the other day, and I will break it down into 2 categories. Is it a need or is it a want? Do I need this or do I want this? And once you can, we talked about being a good steward and being wise with your money and careful about your spending. Is it something I need? And I'll go back to your dorm experience. Or is it something I want? when you were getting that money, and now you got the things, it was something that got you over to the things that you needed. If you needed something, you could say, hey, Dad, I need X. And then I would send you money. But those wants is what drives a lot of our spending rather than our needs. So let's break down what we want in terms of needs and wants. Do I want to be financially solvent, or do I need to be by the time I'm 25 years old? Is that a need or a want? If it's a need, you'll do whatever you need to do to get there. If it's a want, it'll be like, yeah, well, I want that, but I want this too. And those wants are competing. You'll find yourself leaning toward different avenues rather than being wiser with your money. I wanted a car. I wanted a stereo. I enjoyed some of those things, but to me it was always I wanted those things. I needed to be more financially aware of what I was doing with my paychecks. But I learned afterwards that I made a mistake, and then I U-turn. So those two things will drive a lot of the way you spend your time and your money. Break it down into that. Is it a need or is it something that I want? And then let's talk about those. So those things is what you really have to focus on when you're doing your money. Is it a need or a want? Mm-hmm. So whoever's listening, if you're just starting out, put saving money or preparing yourself to be financially independent in the need. I need to do that rather than I want to do that. By 25, 26, 30 years old, I want to be here. I want to have $5,000. I'll just say, probably want more than that, but depending upon how much money you're making. Well, that's my goal. Now I have to move that into a need. So.
Alrighty, guys, I just wanted to spend a little time and talk to you guys about I guess a charge or a takeaway that I want you to be able to leave this episode with, even if you don't remember anything else. Hopefully you took some notes or something, but it's definitely available whenever you need it. But I just want to leave you with this piece of advice that can apply to many facets of life. You do not need to be extreme. You just have to be consistent. And I think this really resonates with the topics we talked about today, because finances can become overwhelming very, very fast, and you can feel pressure to make drastic changes depending on the political state of the country and the economic state and all these outside influences that really don't have anything to do with who you are as an individual, but just the nation that we live in and how it impacts people on an individual level. So I just leave every person who's listening to this with that advice that being consistent is the most important part of it all. It doesn't matter if you do go extreme or not. If you're not able to be consistent with the way that you are intentionally making behaviors, habits, and patterns in your life that are meant to help you grow, you'll never really be able to see the outcome. I use the example of working out or face care or dieting. If you don't ingrain parts of those things into your everyday lifestyle, you're bound to always be in flux and kind of waiting for the results or the outcome to come out, and it can delay the process even longer, and it could just make it much more unnecessarily long in a way that can be avoided if you just day by day choose to be consistent for yourself. So I just wanted to leave you with that, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys again. Please stay tuned for all the great things we have coming up on the podcast. Next week, we're going to be talking about trauma bonding as a culture, and what does that mean, and what does that look like, and why is it a natural thing for Black people to connect on the basis of trauma. So with that being said, you guys enjoy the rest of your week, and I will catch you guys next time. I just wanted to close out the episode and ask you if there was a charge or at least one thing you wanted them to take away from all that they've heard today.
I do. A couple of things I want to leave. First and foremost, let me extend myself. I've been financially independent for a real long time, and what I mean by that is, I've been able to, under the principles that I've had, I've seen my money grow and understand different principles of finances as you grow a little older. I don't have any, like I said before, I really don't have any bills other than the car payments, my mortgage payment, and that's something that everybody should strive for. And not everybody can get there in their 20s, in their 30s. It took me to my 40s really to get to a place where I can just relax and be at peace with how much money that I was able to put away. I'm thankful that I was able to achieve that. That you guys have never been without, you and your sister, and so that was important to me. I also want to leave this charge with your listeners. Just like I would extend myself to help you or Tashi with your budgets. If you know of someone who's financially struggling, maybe they're just starting out and their budget, they don't know how to set up a budget. They don't know how to divide whether or not it's a need or want. Everything seems like a need, or maybe everything, I want more things than I know what to do with. I don't understand how to separate the two. If they reach out to you, I will be glad to help whoever's listening, and they find themselves in that predicament. The second thing that, I'm a visual learner. For me, if I could get my hands on it, if I could put my mind to it, then I could see myself going through stuff. If you're just talking to me, it probably go in one end out the other without an illustration. So without a video illustration, I want to illustrate something, and I want you to look at this and as I walk through it, and give your audience some insight as to what you see. Before I do, I want to just say this. A lot of times it's not people, and I always say this, it's not that we plan to fail. Nobody plans to fail. They just fail to plan. It's true financially, more so than anything else. But for your audience, imagine this. If I gave a 2-year-old a crayon and a coloring book, that 2-year-old would color. They have no clue about what they're doing. The sky could be red, or they would have purple grass or whatever. When you're first learning how to budget, that's kind of how we make a mess of our budget. We don't know what to do. That's why I say I'll be glad to help whoever reaches out to you. We'll sit down and we'll do a telephone console or Zoom or whatever we want to do, however you want to set it up. I'll be glad to help them to get to a place where they can at least start to make progress. But I have some drawings. And when you guys are very little, this is kind of how I illustrate it. Some of them have stick figures on it, or a tiger with 12 legs. Got blue clouds, and she drew a little mall and her tiger, and I don't know what that is, but I use that to say, if you give a 2-year-old a crayon or a box of crayons, they'll draw things like this. 4-year-olds. But when we first start earning money, if you don't understand the principles, you will do this with your money. And you have no way of understanding how to get to a point where, without getting overwhelmed anyway, where you don't know how to keep yourself balanced in terms of understanding and saving and providing. And sometimes you have kids or pets or cars, and you have all of these things, and that can be overwhelming. And not everybody is. I thank God that your granddad was able to instill that in us at an early age. Like I said, our first part-time jobs, he was taking us over to the bank. When you're looking at your finances, you can make a mess. Now, it's a beautiful mess now that you can look at it and be like, oh, that's very cute, how she did this. But when you talk about money and a way to get ahead, it's something totally different, because now something like this financially can get you upside down, where you're stressed out on cars, or how am I going to pay my rent? I got my lights turned off, and things of that nature. So if I were to give you a coloring book now, you would color, and it would be nothing like this, because you've already learned, to stay within the lines. You know how to make green. The grass should be green, or whatever. The trees should be brown. So you understand that. Everybody has to understand that. Even if you come from a place of, I really don't know what to do, I really don't understand finances, I really can't grasp how to get started and then stay on track, reach out to somebody that you have confidence in, allow them to help you now. I said confident. That person that you have consult with shouldn't be in the same predicament as you are. So there's a lot of, some people that would tell you what to do and they're not doing it themselves. Find somebody who's financially literate. Ask them, are you really able to teach me something that will help me? If I'm in debt, I can't teach you how to get out of debt. I've been in debt, I've got out of it, so I should be able to explain to you how I got out of it, the principles that I use, or investing, as we talked about before. I'll teach you how to invest your money, but that'll be a different podcast. But so I just want to leave that last little tidbit with your listeners. If they're still coloring like this, if they're still drawing purple grass and green skies, and you're probably not able to figure out how to get to a place of financial solvency or independence. So thank you for allowing me to come on and speak.
Thank you for being here.
I appreciate it, and I will definitely, like I said, I'll if there's someone out there that needs help, I'll be glad to help out. So
I just wanted to hop on again and talk to you real quick. I know during the episode we mentioned if you wanted to get some advice, or you wanted to be able to speak to my dad and get some financial wisdom, or just some 1, 2, 3 type steps of how to get started budgeting, please feel free to hop on to Anchor and send us a voice message, which you should be able to find on my podcast page a voice message option where you can record your voice and tell me what you need from me, and I'll be able to reach out. Just make sure that you leave some contact information in there so that I'm able to reach back out to you all, and we can coordinate a Zoom call or, whatever you need, and works on both schedules. So definitely feel free to reach out. I just want to express my gratitude for you taking time out of your day to share this space with me. I hope this episode was meaningful and you leave feeling enriched. I appreciate you for being a part of this community of listeners. I hope you gain some fulfillment out of your day. Please do not forget to go follow us here and on all social media platforms. You can find us on Instagram at the platform LTAI podcast and Twitter at the platform LTAI. Also, share any episodes that you've enjoyed with loved ones. I appreciate any help getting this community to grow. Sending positivity your way, this is your host, Jasmine, signing off. Stay safe, stay well, and farewell.